What's up, Capoeira Nation? Welcome back to the Capoeira Experience podcast. Thank you so much for being part of the Capoeira community. Keep training, supporting your school, traveling, and supporting the podcast too. And it's important for us to, as a community, to stay as a community. I always say on the podcast, we cannot be a community if we don't stick together. So that's the whole point of also the podcast from the community to the community. So today I have a really special guest. I like to say this all the time. I'm a big admirer of capoeira, strong capoeira, and I've been her admirer since even before I met her, because the capoeira just with the jinga, I can see this is a pretty strong base. So I really like to bring my own inspiration to you, so I can hopefully you can get some inspiration from that too, and watch those videos, because you're gonna get a lot of inspiration there. And since I think I met you probably 2013. I think that was probably the very first time we met. Yeah, right. I think so. Yeah. So perfect. So we've been friends since 2013. And talking, I went to her event in New York. She's New York based, the Big Apple, and he's super excited to go there again once I can. So please let me introduce you to Formanda Coruja. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here finally. I know we've been trying to link up before all this COVID stuff, and
true, yeah.
finally we met again, and I want you on the podcast, and super excited. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm super happy and excited.
Yeah. The pleasure is mine, because I and I'm pretty sure I told you this before. If I haven't told you, I'm gonna tell you now that really your capoeira always been an inspiration for me, and I always tell my wife, I always like, if you wanna learn really good capoeira, watch Joy's videos, because he's the capoeira has that flavor there,
Yeah, I take that with great honor, because it's just, it's been a long journey, and I'm still continuing, right? Yeah. And still going and still changing, still evolving as I grow, and as I get older, things are changing. But I just want to have gratitude for that, right? Because it keeps me going, the community, and even just this podcast, right? You're doing this for the community. And I think as I got older in capoeira, understand my role in the community, how that's changed, and also just still enjoying capoeira in my own way, right? Where I don't feel so burned out. Because as a teacher, sometimes you do feel burned out. It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. But to really enjoy it for myself, and to learn how to do that so I can keep growing.
Yeah, for sure. It's not like you said, it's not easy to lead a capoeira school and sustain it for a long time. Because sometimes you get unmotivated, and then the students speak at you. Is like, oh man, I gotta deal with this student. And then on the other side is also like, oh man, these students are so good, and they keep showing to class, and then they also motivate you. Is that balance of oh man, and
Yeah, absolutely. And then you think, capoeira, and then after a while, you're just like, capoeira is a lifestyle. It is my life. It is who I am. And, it just, there are so many times as a teacher too, you feel like giving up, right? Where you're just like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. But then again, it's the community, it's the art, it's we just had this experience of this event that keeps me going, all that energy, and it's awesome. So it's a blessing. Capoeira has been a blessing for me, and I'm happy that I'm able to inspire and continue the work that I'm doing while I'm here.
Yeah, totally. Because it's not easy to, especially now the pandemic for the last year and a half, is lame everybody around. And then we still try to move around and survive and bring it back to class, and try to keep the fire going. A lot of people gave up capoeira too because of the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that. And you know what? The thing I think as leaders in the community is to remember who we are, and to
Totally.
and continue to be there for people who may have left, but like want to come back, right? Because
Yeah.
the pandemic had hit hard in New York. I mean, it hit all over the world pretty hard, right? But
Yes.
in New York in the beginning, it was really bad. And I remember just being like, all right, well, eventually we have to figure out something because I want to keep this community going, but maybe it's just not sustainable right now, right? Like
Yeah.
the place I was teaching closed down, the jiu-jitsu school couldn't hang, the dance studios were closing, the gym, everything had closed.
Yeah.
And, I started making these YouTube private videos for my students just to get them motivated to train at home. And then eventually I shifted onto Zoom. And, I mean, to tell you the truth, I've once I started capoeira, I like really did not stop training unless I had like an injury or something had happened. That's the type of person I am. I loved it so much. And this pandemic had made me kind of like take a break. I mean, even when I was working at my top, right? I was working so much, teaching so many classes to help grow the group.
Yeah.
And like I literally had no break. But this pandemic, not that it was a blessing in disguise. I think it's just again a shift, right?
Yes.
And it helped me open my eyes to like how much maybe I needed to let other people take the lead. Maybe I needed to also start to grow in other ways that's going to help my group and the community expand a little bit.
Yeah.
And have time for me to kind of reflect on like what I need to do to get to the next stage of my capoeira group, right? Because I've been leading this group in New York for a long time. So kind of letting the higher courts kind of just find their own groove and like teach a little bit less and take a break, and it's okay to do that because again, capoeira is a lifestyle. It's not something you're gonna do. I mean, it is something we do every day in our own way, right? But like I feel like just finding that balance so that we can do what we love to do.
Yeah, and have fun and still have fun without being all stressed out. Because I feel like once we put all the load of stress on us, that's when we start getting burned out and be like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't know this was, I didn't know I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to be happy, right? That even though there's only 1 or 2 students in class, and to have that space for them, right? And to know that I did the Zoom and we're moving capoeira, and to be able to use that platform to teach, which capoeira, what I love to do, was really nice. And I didn't care that there was like 2 or 1, I just held the space. And then eventually knowing that they're just going to come back and we'll regrow again. But like to not be like, oh my God, I'm not going to, I mean, I get it. Some people, they need to do what they have to do to survive. It's like, that's, their bread and butter.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to still do what I love, which is to teach capoeira in the schools, to teach phys ed in the schools, but then also run the adult group that I have here in New York. Yeah,
because there is you nail it when you say like to have 1 or 2 students. Because my first 2 years in Indianapolis, it's like just me and my wife for 2 years.
Hard.
And I was like, man, and exactly like you said at the beginning, it's like, do I really want to teach? And I was like, should I keep traveling and just like keep my own capoeira life? And then he was like, man, and then my wife was like, don't worry, we'll get through. And then I was back and forth. Should I keep it or should I stay? I was like, I'm gonna stick to just to see if I know somebody's gonna show up at some point. And then now I have 8, I think, a like consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some of your people in Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just takes one thing about being a teacher, and especially a capoeira teacher, is patience, right? Because we have this fire as, younger core to like, we see, right? We go, we travel, we see these huge groups, we go, we exchange, and, these groups that we go to sometimes has 20, 30 people, and we're like, oh my God, one day I'm going to have like this great group. And then you forget that it takes all that patience, all that time and dedication you put in people, right?
Totally.
To then start to nurture this group that later becomes like a bigger community that grows exponentially.
Yeah. And before we keep going, what are your social media so people can like find you and watch those capoeira videos?
Oh yeah. So you can find me at Joy Capoeira on Instagram. You could also follow the group at Capoeira Brazil NYC on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. I believe it's Capoeira Brazil NYC.
Okay, okay, nice. So New York, Capoeira Brazil, New York City there, and just make sure you
Yeah,
follow there. And
yeah.
it's,
Formanda Joy, you'll find me, or
yeah,
Coruja.
yeah. They man, they if you ever once the pandemic is done, and you go to New York, make sure you find them because it's a really cool group, and I like the energy because it reminds me a lot to the energy back in Venezuela, because it's very very unite, and everybody play with everybody and joke around, and he's always smiling. It's really cool to go there and visit.
Yeah, I feel like it also has to do with just New York, just a capoeira community. It's been growing for a long time, right?
Yeah,
And then even for my group, a lot of the people, it's about longevity, right? So a
yeah,
lot of people in my group, the reason we have that connection, they've been training a long, like, I have people that have been training with me for 18 years. So at
wow,
that point, right, like from 18 years, we're training and working together. We're creating this friendship. We're getting to know each other. They're
yeah,
becoming leaders. It's like, you just have this dynamic, right?
yeah,
And I truly do believe that students kind of find who they want to train with. I mean,
yes,
I feel like that has happened to me, and then that has helped me grow, but also the group kind of grow, right?
yeah.
Because they want to be there. They're not forced to be there.
Yes, yes, that's a big one too, because is and sometimes as a teachers we forget that too, and be like, the students is the one that choose you. You don't choose the student. Is
Right.
they are the one that come to you and want to learn from you, but to try to like hold them there. And then I think back in Venezuela, there was this some of teachers there that was like, no, my students are my students. You can go to others. Like, no, man, it's just like, it's no, we're not military, man.
Yeah, I feel like as a leader, you guide them, right? And then
Correct.
sometimes, similar to what we talked about, like the closing of a school, sometimes that person evolves and their capoeira goes somewhere else. And to be more mature in capoeira is to kind of also let go, is to
Correct.
like let them discover their capoeira journey. You are part of that, but
Yeah.
maybe just it's not working, and that's okay too.
Yeah. 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 Totally. And how now that you mentioned the 18 years that people have been with you, how long? What is your capoeira story? Like, when do you start, the year, and then everything, and how?
Wow. So I started, so you know what? I started in 1999,
Nice.
capoeira, with, actually, my story was I used to swim
Okay.
in high school, and in college, I was like, you know what? I need to do something else. I was one of those people that saw only the strong.
Nice.
It's like, oh my God, this is really cool. Like, I love gymnastics. I loved, the movement, but I really didn't know. And it was in around, I think, the late 90s, right? Around 1997, 98, where internet started coming up. So
Yeah.
I was like, let me look up some schools. And it was just one page that came up, and it was a list of people like Messi João Grande and Messi Jalone, Dance Brazil. And how would I know that Messi
Yeah.
Jalone, the first person that I met in capoeira, was the person who brought capoeira to the United
I
States?
know. Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I went to Messi João Grande, didn't know, right? Because I'm like, I don't know,
Who's this old guy?
I'm 20
Yeah.
years old, and I'm
Yeah.
like, this is like awesome. It's cool. His academy. I didn't
Yeah.
know it was this amazing place that's so
Yes.
rich, so much history, right?
Yeah.
So I walk in, I'm like, young and in my early 20s, 20 years old, and I'm looking around and I'm like, this is cool, like the instruments and stuff, but I saw like really fast, like kicks and stuff. This is like
Yeah.
slower. But I was feeling the energy and the vibe. So I'm like, I like this, but this is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I went to the next person on the list, and I think it was a Dance Brazil address. So I went to this building where Mestre Jalone used to teach classes because it was multiple floors,
Okay.
and he's really down to earth. I don't know if I mean, you've
Yeah.
met Mestre Jalone,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like,
I
if you
love
have
message
not met
alone.
Mestre
Yeah.
Jalone, he's amazing. He's
Yeah.
became one of like my capoeira, mentors too. I have
That's awesome.
many.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was like, you know what? I'm not teaching classes. So I met him and he goes, I'm not teaching classes, but here's an address to someone who's teaching. His name is Professor Caxias at the time.
Oh,
He's teaching
nice.
downtown. You should take his class Monday, Wednesday. I sometimes drop by. Right now I'm focusing on Dance Brazil. This is my thing, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll take that. And I stepped into class that maybe Monday or Wednesday night downtown. And I literally never left. Like it was just
That's so cool.
so much fun, so much training, everything new, right? It was like the
Yeah.
music, the challenge. I was used to
Yeah.
swimming back and forth in a pool and training and being very disciplined, but this was everything that I almost loved to do and thought about as a kid. Acrobatics, I love gymnastics,
Yeah.
kicking, and like the music and the energy, like the feeling of that energy, right?
Yeah.
And seeing people do amazing things, I was like, oh, this is yes. And I
Oh, and
got
I learned that.
addicted. I
Yeah.
want to learn that. And I got
Yeah.
addicted. And it was not easy. Like
Yeah.
I'm like athletic, but I wasn't like, some people just get it off the bat. You're like, wow, you're a beginner.
Yeah.
I was a beginner. I got it, but it wasn't like so fast. I remember him being like this and like, okay, now do K shot. I was like, oh, he's like, no, not that way. And I remember I would go home and practice, and
Yeah.
eventually I was training almost like we had class. He had class 7 days a week. He had
Wow.
class maybe like 9 times or something like that, and I ended up
Dang.
going to every class. But so I trained with him actually for about 6 months. I got my yellow cord, so it was fast,
Oh,
right? Because I
cool.
was like obsessed. So I started in January. I think in May or June, he had a batizado. But in April, Mestre Jalone had come back, right? So he would come back and visit, but he came back with his troupe.
Oh.
And he came back with like Mestre Piquinez now, and
Oh.
Aladdin, and Gafanhoto, and like all of these people and Mestre Joe, who had done Capoeira Brazil, and all of them were like teachers at the time, purple
Yeah.
cords, right? And his young kids who were like blue cords, but doing amazing things.
Yeah. A bunch of
Um,
crazy high level capoeira.
yeah, high level
Yeah.
when I'm like a beginner and seeing that and getting
Yeah.
inspired, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first time I did see eventually Joe. I trained with Joe for many years, and she was like my inspiration and still is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Same.
I ended up training with her, like eventually talking to Caxias and being like, hey, I feel like I need to train with her. Like
Yeah.
I just identify. And literally too, there weren't many women. Like she was one of the first women that I've seen that
To
could
be
like,
at class and everything.
I mean, in class that was like hanging. I mean,
Yeah.
hanging and like playing. And, you
Yeah.
talk about strong bass. And I was like,
Yes.
wow, look at her bass. And
Yeah.
I met like Mestre Magali too, another inspiration that
Yes.
she taught
Totally.
for Caxias when I was a beginner. But Joe was ending up staying in New York, and I was like, I need to train with her. And it was just her charisma and her capoeira, and she's been playing capoeira for like, I don't know, 40 plus years,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
a long time, and her experience. And so I ended up training after talking to Caxias, after getting my yellow cord, maybe in September of that next year. I had started training double, right? So I was training with Caxias, training
Yeah.
with Joe, until finally I talked to him and said, listen, I feel I identify with her. Can I? And he totally gave me his blessing. We're still
Nice.
friends till today.
Nice.
We still talk. And I started training with Joe. She, was teaching up in Yonkers. I ended up getting up to about blue cord with her, like being her right hand and
Oh, cool.
training and literally like working and teaching and doing
That's
all
very
of
cool.
that stuff.
Yeah. I
until
can
she
I can totally see her capoeira on you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
feel
You
like,
absorb from
like
that.
part of that base is, her inspiration. And then
Yeah.
as we grow and become more of our own self in capoeira
Totally. Yeah.
and bring our own flavor and identity, like
Yes.
that kind of starts to mix and match, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
those people like Aladdin who had passed away, and like Gafanhoto and Buhasha, who's still around now, all of those, people, and
Yeah.
Joe and Piquinez, they were my like inspiration when I was younger. And then to take, a part of each teaching and a part of each workshop and a part of each training that you go to kind of make it your own, you start to build your own identity, right? And so
Yeah.
after a time when Joe had left and eventually she like left the group, I ended up staying. I really do like Capoeira Brazil, so I ended
Yeah.
up staying with, Mastery, and, and for Mestre Boneco, for us, like for him to guide me. But like,
Yeah.
I feel like we are, how can I say that? I mean, that's like part of my journey, right? To kind
Yeah.
of just like move to the next, and not that like it's common, right? Because there are people who
Yeah.
stay with the ministry throughout, but I felt like I also just stayed, like I felt at home with this group.
Yes.
So then
Yes. Yeah.
that was like, I'm going to continue that because this is where I felt, right? Because like when she had left, there was like this fork in the road. What do I do? Right.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I had to listen to where I was in my capoeira, and,
Yeah.
and where I needed to grow, right? Because sometimes people feel like they have to. And it's like, you kind of have to listen to yourself sometimes. And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what
Make
do
make
I
your
need
own
to?
choice.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in capoeira, it's very like you said, sometimes militant, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to do this, you have to, and the teacher. But I truly do believe that if capoeira is a lifestyle, right, we're constantly growing as humans. So
Yes.
and evolving. So we have to sometimes listen to and tune out and listen to ourselves and what's best for us,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's take a break or maybe find a new space to be in, or right. And
Yeah.
so I just felt like being with Messi was just the way that I felt like I was going to develop, right?
Nice. Nice.
But it's not that, you don't honor your teachers in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Definitely.
course. Of course.
Each
Yeah.
person that's, been a part of this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got the capoeira that you have pretty much from them. You just now have a different guy, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when do you switch to Mr. Boneco, and when do you meet Mr. Boneco?
So in about 2000, so I met Mesh Boneco back in '99. I went to one of the first
Cool. Oh, okay.
Batizados there in LA, right? Because Joe is
Oh,
under Mesh Boneco, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
she used to roll, and that's why I think my people roll around, like they come to Batizados, like we used to roll 20 deep, right? And so we
Yeah,
would roll, and like how my people roll, they roll
yeah,
like 20 deep, going to a Batizado, we're like having a great time. So we're just used to that, right?
yeah.
And so I met Mastery in 1999. And I kind of understood. I'm like, oh, his charisma and why
Yes.
Joe had felt like, oh, I want to train with him, because there's so many people that you meet that you're like, oh, you see them, but then when you really see them in capoeira, you're like, oh, okay,
Oh,
I
yeah.
get it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
he just had this thing about him, right? And this energy. And I was like, wow. And to be so intense, but at the same time, that have that balance of like, oh, I can sit down and have a conversation
True.
and, talk about, capoeira. And again, he wasn't, when I first met him, I didn't know that side of him
Yeah.
until now, right? I met him in 1999, and then I got my green cord with him. So I got my blue cord in 2003 with Messi Joe, and
Nice.
then eventually from blue to green, I got my green cord with Messi. I don't know. It might have been 2005 or six. One of those.
Okay.
You know what? Because it becomes one big blur after a while, right?
I know. Yeah.
I felt like my journey, and every journey is different, but like in the beginning, and not that I'm not intense now, but like I went through chords really fast, right? Like
Yeah,
I was just happened to go fast in the beginning, and then as I got in the higher belts, it just became slower. It was just like, like 6, 7 years, 8 years, and that's okay. Everyone is just different. That's and I got that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you start understanding that the time with capoeira, because at the beginning you just wanna get to blue core and then start doing stuff, and then
exactly
that's how my students are. They white yellow, and they're already thinking on teaching classes when they are blue and all that. I was like, we'll get you there, man.
I feel like totally dream big, but then
for sure
they figure out like, oh, 1, 2 students, this is harder than what it is, right? Like the reality hits.
Yeah.
But I think for now too, for me, it's more about like enjoying each moment, right? It's like, wow, enjoying like, oh, I got to that level, right? And now let's enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure.
Each chord allows you to do it in its own way, right? Each like phase in this journey. And like, even when you finish the course and get your, in our group, the black belt, it's just like the beginning. It's another
Yeah,
beginning, right?
yeah,
Of like, oh, this chapter. And I don't know. I'm just trying to enjoy each moment. Because as you said, when you're a beginner, it's like, oh my God, I can't wait, right? I can't wait. Because when I'm yellow, I could be in the higher chord group and play. Because
yeah.
you graduate and then everything else fun happens the next chord up. I feel
Pretty
like
much.
that's what happens, right?
Yeah,
But I feel like patience, they'll get there. We
yeah,
will get
yeah, for sure. And I always tell them is like, yeah, don't worry, we'll get you there. You'll get there for sure.
there.
Just
Yeah.
keep, you guys just gotta keep training. I'm same thing. Is like, if you don't train, you're not gonna get there. You just gotta keep training so you can get there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and then try to keep the fire alive because he's in travel, meet a bunch of people so you can keep the fire while also keep the fire going.
Yes, yes, I
Yeah,
think that's important. And I think that pandemic made it hard because we weren't traveling
true.
or doing events as much, right? Like that's why Cleveland was a big boost for me, my energy, and just, I mean, I kept through my capoeira, but I was just like, okay, now I kind of remember like one,
Yeah,
capoeira and like who I am and what this community means to me. Because
yeah,
again, we're in our house, we're in our smaller groups,
yeah,
2 or 3 people, maybe 4 people training. It's not like, I mean, and I feel like it was a small event.
yeah,
Imagine like
yeah. Oh
huge
yeah.
events that we go to where we're meeting people from France, Brazil, and all of these
Oh
places,
man.
Israel, and
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Like Mr. Boneco's events. Those like when I went 2013, huge. I don't even know how many people were in there. And the
Yeah.
second time too.
Yeah,
And I
I
was
mean,
like, man.
anywhere, right? Like even
Yeah,
where Brazil, you go in Mestre Paulinho, you go to Mestre Monaco. I'm sure in Europe, you go to Mestre Paulon's events. It's huge.
yes, yeah. And I always say it's funny because almost all my students started and during the pandemic, and I always tell them like, you just wait when we start traveling. Just wait, hold on in there, and you're gonna see way more capoeira. You're gonna have a lot of fun, and then just we're gonna travel. And then as soon as they could travel, is like, okay, we can go here.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like, we're gonna travel, and well, since you met me, I've been traveling a lot. I went to your event, I've been all over the place.
Oh yeah, me too. For
Yeah,
capoeira, I feel like you know what? Like if you are someone who does teach in the community and like have a group, traveling is a big part of
yes,
knowing the capoeira community, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
we know that capoeiristas can't just train at home. It's
yeah,
like it's that experience, and then
yeah,
that also just helps you later in the future.
correct. Yeah, okay, so and the higher level you get, I feel like more connected you need to be with the community. And then
Absolutely.
yeah, you becoming a servant of the community. It's
Hmm.
because you giving all back.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think are like really good points to lead like a capoeira class for how do you lead your capoeira class, or as a leader, how do you think like how important keys to be a leader in a class?
Are we talking like the community, like New York community, or just like in class in general, like
in,
as a
in, in
teacher?
in your own class?
So in my own class, I feel like some keys that are important is just one, yourself,
Yeah,
right? Having a strong foundation and your own practice,
yeah,
right? Because how could I, and consistency. So how could I continue to teach if I'm not being inspired, right? It's like I need to feed myself,
good point. Yeah,
right? And like be a part and connected to the community in whatever capacity that I can at the moment of my life so that I can give back,
yeah,
right? Because if I'm just recycling things that are like old, that's not making growth. And what one
correct.
thing as a teacher I like to do is I mean, I'm at a level where I feel like I have a good foundation that I can start then experimenting a little bit, playing with elements and objectives and stuff like that with my students, right?
Yeah,
Um and then learning from them, right?
yeah,
I think one key is one, give to yourself in your practice, and connect to the community, then you can give to your students,
Yeah.
right? I feel like as a teacher too, I always have certain elements that I always, build on. So it's always, you mentioned like strong base. I feel
Yeah.
like I always, as a teacher, always work basics with them, right? And kind of, remind them that capoeira is not only flips, but it
Yeah.
is also just, building that base. And I think later on, they appreciate it,
Yeah.
right? But like in the beginning, it's like, oh, I want to do something else. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I want to do everything.
and I try to, as a teacher, I mean, this is my life, right? So it's like I
Yeah.
teach phys ed outside, I teach capoeira. This is what I love to do. I actually am blessed to know that I feel like I found the right career path for me. So I like to make it fun. Like I will make classes fun. I'll make basics fun. I'll change it up a little bit, right?
Nice. Yeah.
Just because I feel like it's important. And there's so many ways to do it in capoeira, right?
For
There's
sure.
so
Yeah.
many ways. As I got older and becoming more like of a leader in capoeira, it was for me became like building the community. And I think what's important is knowing your students.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So because I've had students that trained, right, for a long time, but also just the beginner students, knowing them, I think as a teacher is important. Who they are, because each person that comes, we talked about this, that trains and finds you, right, they can offer something special to your group. Yeah. And to the community. And if we as teachers kind of treat them as like, oh, they're just a student the same as everyone else, they come, then we're losing out.
Yeah, they're gonna
building this rich community that we have, right? Because I mean, you're a teacher, like we have people who can like all walks of life that join capoeira, and they all contribute, and they all find this like connection to capoeira. So why not get to know our students? Why not get to know our community a little better, so that they can also bring their best selves, and we can help grow this community. But in the beginning, it's very hard as a teacher to see that perspective. But I think it's really important to know your student's name, to know what they do, to build that, right? Because that's going to help build your group, to know them as a person. Yeah. Right? Because capoeira too, it's like the hierarchy, right? And I feel like sometimes when we go to events and depending on like that environment, like people don't get that. But I think in our smaller communities where we're teaching every day, right? You can teach them about that hierarchy, but you can also just learn about them as people, right? And each person, what I learned learns differently.
Totally.
Right?
Oh, yes.
So as a teacher too, learning that lesson, right?
It's not easy to understand that either.
Because when you start to really know each student, you kind of know like, oh, I can't teach. That person doesn't learn the way I do. So I need to figure out how, right, to best teach them that skill in which they will learn it. Yeah. And in the beginning, as like a beginner teacher, right, I was just like, but that's how I learned, and that's how you should learn. And then as I became more attuned to, becoming a better teacher, learning about my students, understanding how to like break down things in different ways, then I started to see a change, and I started to see a group develop more, and just like happier people that wanted to come to class, and it wasn't so rigid. And it's just it takes time. That's the other thing about like leading a group. It takes time. Don't give up. Patience and like self-reflection, again, learning who you are so that you can then kind of give and understand everyone else around you. And once you do that, you have a solid practice. You honor the people around you, right? And how they learn. You're confident then, and you build that safe space for people to learn. And then you can actually pass that capoeira for real, and then let it continue. And then trust, right? Because that was the other thing. That's the other thing that's very hard, is I've put in years to this student. Now I need to let go and trust that that student took all that information, right? And can pass it along, because that's how capoeira is going to grow. Yeah, totally. And if I hold on and have so much control, like, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. You can't do this. They're not going to develop, and we kind of get stuck. So it's like this, there's so many elements, but I think what's important, right, is just one thing in capoeira too, being present.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. That's I actually say that too, on one of my, when I think that was in Cleveland, because I also record, like the behind the scenes of all every time I travel, and I send camera, like, it's hard for me to record everything in the events because I want to be present. I want to have fun in the event, and I can record the hadas and all that, but it's tricky for me to, especially now that learning how to vlog and like recording behind the camera and all that. But I want to be present in the event. I can be taking care of the camera and be present, and it's tricky.
It's very hard, but I feel like capoeira is a tool for you to kind of practice to be present, right?
Yes.
So like you have to be present in the hada. You have to be present to listen to the music. You have to, be present with your partner, because if your brain is somewhere else, that
you're
you
not
might
gonna
get
have
kicked.
that connection.
You're not gonna have a fun time either.
Yeah.
You're just kind of going through the motions. You kind of miss the essence of it. So I feel like in that sense, capoeira can teach us to be present, but also when you are a teacher and a leader in the community, you need to be present for your students. You need to be there. What I say sometimes when I'm teaching, right, and why I know I love it so much is that when I'm teaching, I'm like 100% with them in a bubble. Like, this is what's happening. And then you guess what? After class, I feel so happy. I'm so energized.
Yeah.
And it felt like it was so easy, right? And that's because I was just enjoying that moment with my students, that hada, that teaching, that practice there.
Yeah. And you finish the class and it's like, oh, this class was pretty good. Yeah.
For sure.
As a community, the last couple questions. As a community, how do you think we can get closer? We can get better as an entire community.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some people feel adverse to these capoeira exchanges, right?
Yeah.
But from when Sadokuru and Mestre Muito Tempo were doing those, they've inspired me and Omi to kind of just, and Mestre Tabara was like, oh, you should do one on the East Coast. So we started doing that on the East Coast. I mean, you're in the middle, so you can go either way, right?
Yeah, that's true. Or make it here, make it happen.
Make it there, right? I mean, it's tough with COVID, but it's been in the back of my mind. I think that also just has helped bring community together.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Strong leadership, and also just to have a woman, right, to organize some of these events.
Big events, because how many people you think were last time you guys did it there?
So our biggest one, we had so many people. We had like over 100 people.
Wow.
Like, I have some of the back footage of that to show you. I also did this huge women's event that people are, you talked about this back footage and you can't do everything.
Yeah.
When we have time, I did do this women's event in 2010, I think it was 2010. And it was called the Maré Subiu.
Okay.
And I had someone had taped all the back stuff, had done interviews with all the teachers, had done all like videotape each teacher teaching with the mics and stuff like that. So everything to kind of create this capoeira, almost like movie documentary. I had everyone sign. We had like almost 200 participants.
Damn.
It was amazing. That event was like, and that's when women's events weren't happening. And like, yeah, I feel like it is almost surreal to just like have like, oh, women's events. I think there are other ways that we can create a platform where women can also grow and be seen.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, I want to do one. So I did one, and I'm actually talking to someone to edit it. And we're just trying to figure out like, are we going to edit small clips, or are we going to do one big movie? So I'm kind of figuring that out. But I mean, people who are part of that event are like, Joy, where's that footage? What's happening with that?
Yeah, that would be super cool to watch.
Oh my God. If I go back, it's amazing. It's also part of it is like telling the story, right? Telling the story of what was happening back then and people's point of view. But I do believe like for our community to grow too, just also people not giving up. And
Yeah,
I feel like
totally.
it's a long journey, but like to keep up so that you can continue in these leadership roles. And I think even
Yeah,
for women, and you talk about strong women in capoeira, to find the inspiration not to give up so we can be in these roles and do things that our peers or male peers,
yeah,
right, are doing,
yeah,
running batizados, creating
totally.
events
Yeah,
and retreats and stuff like that. Like to be in those leadership positions is hard and
yeah,
it takes time.
yeah.
But the thing is, sometimes I would tell myself is just never give up, just keep
Yes,
going, get there.
push through. Yeah,
And now I'm able to do these things, right? And create opportunities for, one, other women to see me, or other capoeiristas. Doesn't have to be a woman, but generally we know that if you go to a capoeira event, it's like five male high chords and maybe one or two women,
yes, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like, how can we get it so it's a little bit more, balanced? It's not going to
yeah,
happen overnight,
yeah, for sure.
but to create, like, as a woman leader, like one thing I like to do too is to invite both male
Yeah,
but also female guest teachers, but like maybe even now people just who don't identify as female or male, but like people who are inspirations to the community,
yeah,
to my event. And then you just, you work from there, but it's hard because it just happens to be that there are just more uh, men in those positions,
male fears.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I'm sure like once we find the those inspiration, as long as we keep them alive too, and
yeah,
help them to come up, back up, and be like bring them to like, come on, let's go,
yeah,
watch this person.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
I'm a big
That's
fan of that. And I like to bring people and I meet. So that's part of my travel. I travel, I meet people, I make connections. I'm like, oh, you should come to New York. I mean, New York's a great city, right? So
yeah,
people love to come to New York. And but like, I mean, just the guests and the asher that I was able to bring to New York. Mestre Tony Vargas, Mestre Skilo, Mestre Xuxa, like
yes,
Mestre Boneco's always here, Formanda
yeah,
Colibri, like I feel, is it Mestre Tigresa now? Like
yeah,
all of
yeah.
these women, Professor Sarada, like I
Pavão.
even brought Professor Chris at the time with a mestre, one of my peers from Ana Pavão, like
Yeah,
just to bring all of this different energy. Mestre Labon, I'm friends with that. Like all of those, even Angola mestres, even like Mestre Rafael, Contra
ah,
Mestre Rafael had come,
yeah, yeah,
Francis,
yeah.
Francis Jean has not come here, but like, those are like those inspiration. Mesh Magali, to bring those people at my events, right? It's like, it's kind of almost surreal sometimes for me.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really cool to see to see how you lead there, and that's also why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because you pretty strong leader there, because you keep that energy going there too, and
Not
again,
easy, Tashichi.
yeah,
Not easy.
I know, especially in the Big Apple, and having because is not calling us a competition, but when you have so many capoeira groups around you, and you gotta step up too, and be like, hey, I'm also here, but I'm also here on the sense of like, you leading a group, you leading events, making that event happen of the capoeira Mare Subiu, no, right?
Yeah.
Where it was a bunch of people, and you leading all those kind of stuff is really cool, and I think we should like take that as an inspiration.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also the people you attract, right? As leaders
Yes,
to
yes,
help you,
yeah,
right? To help you then be able to create that space. But one thing that I did learn too, I mean, I've been in New York for a long time, and it goes back to connecting to who you are in capoeira. And one thing that I know, not that I'm necessarily leaving New York, but you take your capoeira and all those experience wherever you go.
yes,
Right?
totally.
So
Oh
like
yeah,
say like I mean you've moved right from like South America to here and now you're
yeah,
taking that experience and growing that. So it's really like for me and kind of like what Mestri had done is you plant the seed in people and then you allow it to grow.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so
totally.
for me it's like I'm at a point where it's like I can be here and do all of this, but I know in myself through self reflection and self, knowing who I am in capoeira, that wherever I decide to move or go or stay, I can continue this work.
Yeah, because the experience goes with you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And to wrap it up, to the last question, what would be a single advice for the entire capoeira community?
I feel like it's just to enjoy and have fun. I feel like that is enough to inspire us and to continue our capoeira journey.
Yeah.
I think also to seek multiple resources of inspiration, whether it's take someone else's class, talk to people in your class, go and travel and do capoeira. And I think that's important. And then last is just consistency and stay patient with yourself, right?
Yeah,
and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay. We are not perfect.
Yeah.
And we're going to have bad days. And we're going to feel like a high one day where we did that move that we're like, oh my God, I never thought that I was going to reach and get to that goal or move or belt. And there are days where you're going to feel like, oh, I feel stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
I feel like I'm plateauing. And I've heard that from students. And it's sometimes, you just need a little bit of inspiration and motivation and just continue. But that's why we're here. We're here to support each other and build that community so that we can continue, capoeira.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Joy. It was super fun to have you here and learn from you, because I didn't know your entire story.
Oh, well, I want to hear yours. So next time I'll get you on a podcast and I can hear your story, because I know it's interesting and I like learning about people and, doing that exchange.
Yeah. Same. Awesome. Thank you so much. And as soon as I get all the videos and all the Cleveland videos, I'll send you everyththing to you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
Nice to see you. And hopefully you'll be in New York soon, or I'll be in Indianapolis soon.
Or both.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect.
Let's do both.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for getting this far. Remember, please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up on Facebook or YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is going to help us and help me to get bigger numbers and bigger subscribers so we can give more information. Okay, please, if you're listening, I know you're listening, I know you're watching, please give me a subscribe, give me a like. Okay, I know you're watching right here or listening. All right, have an amazing day. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening every single episode, especially the episode we just did. All right, thank you so much. Peace.